Hello. What's going on? Long time no see. Let's not hold me accountable for all the times I forgot that reading our text on YouTube was a thing that we did. I completely forgot. I can't believe it. I can believe it. Um, this is, I think, a nice way to experience the texts because I think I just think it's a bit nicer to have someone present things, and I get to do a bit of commentary, which maybe pierces the veil around the text as like a perfect finished object, right? It's always constantly in motion. I just publish it and then it's finished, right? So I get to do the little behind the scenes commentary. It's nice. Why do I keep forgetting to do these? They're lovely. I don't get it, but we've been away writing a book. Shh, don't tell anyone, for quite a long time, and that's what I'm chalking it up to. The book has been the only thing on both of our brains. We've had book brain. So a lot of changes. First of all, I got new glasses. They're enormous. Do you like them? You have to say yes. Second of all, I've got glittery nails. Do you like them? Again, you have to say yes. Third, both Gabrielle and I have decided to. We've just basically both lost our minds, and our writing has taken a turn for the worse, for the better, I think. Where we're both kind of playing with form, a bit loose, a bit wonky, a bit funky, and I think it's fun. Where's the background giving? It is. The background is giving liminal space because I'm actually in a phone booth at the office. I've got like a co-working space. I don't know if I'm. I don't know if it's smart to say where, but I've got like a little cheeky discount on a co-working space. So this is like, I'm not joking. I'm touching both ends of the wall right now. I will show you exactly. Look, I'm in a phone booth. A phone booth. So this is kind of maybe not a liminal space, but definitely purgatorial, like which is a kind of liminal space. But it's like out the door. You can. I don't know if legally I'm allowed to do that as well because you might see people walking by. But that's why there's always background chatter on every piece of audio I ever produce, and it just I don't. I think actually, weirdly enough, in 2023, I think having your bedroom as your background on like calls and stuff is actually more professional than having this weird greyish, like inside of a phone booth feeling. Like it looks like I'm in an airport lounge. Not airport lounge. It looks like I'm in like a fancy airplane, doesn't it? I feel like I'm in a fancy airplane. But yeah, it's the only way I can work. I can't work at home in my bedroom. I don't know why. I can't ever get anything done. I just get it's being in too close of physical proximity, mental, emotional, spiritual proximity to my own bed. I just want to be asleep. I've got the worst attention span. Okay. So yes, Gabrielle and I have lost the plot. Last week before last, she published a text called the Bingo Review. And then she also, before that, published a review, Come Dine With Me. Dine with me, not die with me. Please do not know. It's not like a join. You know, no one's dying on Come Dine With Me. The week before, so the Bingo Review, I published a review about swimming pools, I think Gabrielle was trying to write about things in a dystopian way, like write about that dystopian friction of like rubbing up against life and the world and culture in a way that maybe situates herself within it. So like it's like situated. She had a word for it. Situated criticism. Embedded criticism. I think I am looking for a way to write about things, cool Wikipedia pages that I find, basically. Like I'm basically finding a way to do criticism that includes fun facts. Like I think at the moment I'm looking for a loopy kind of fiction that is able to contain like fuller, meatier chunks of citations that are actually tiny little stories, vignettes, windows into other parts of the world and human culture and tie them all together. I'm looking for like fiction to be like a really compelling story. Um, and I think they're two very different urges, but it will make sense eventually, maybe in autumn 2024. Um, and up until that point, we're both trying to, yeah, figure out the impact that writing this enormous book has had on our more short form criticism. And I think it's been a good one. It's made us looser, more experimental, more willing to kind of break with convention. And I think, yeah, I'm really pleased with the stuff we're putting out at the moment. And I wasn't expecting to be pleased with this text. I think I could have done with an extra day on it. But actually, now looking back, I thought I could have done with an extra day on it. But now looking back on it, um, now a week on, I'm like, yeah, no, this is all right. Yeah, it's not bad. It'll do. Yeah, it's called Welcome Pomodoro, and it is a story about a horse that goes on a residency and experiences an existential crisis about the nature of work and whether art is what kind of work art is like. If labor has different categories, and like it's it was something that we identified a couple of years ago, like when artists talk about art, it is handled with this weird friction, like not only working in like labor conditions, like they're not ideal, um, but like the way artists conceptualize the work they do, I don't know if it's a result as a result of working conditions or if the nature of art as work is just a more slippery question. But I think, yeah, those questions about art and work are yeah, quite present in my mind at the moment. And I think not just at the moment, just all the time. But yeah, I think as well, I've always wanted to write about horses. I run a horse Instagram, an Instagram account for horses in paintings called at horse underscore underscore underscore. I'm not sure it's what the at is, but it's about like horses in paintings. I think they are a really interesting symbol, archetype, and like they play an interesting role in like the like, psychic the cultural psychic landscape. I think the psychic culture the, the cultural psychic landscape, yeah, that's what those are the words I'm going to use. I think they play an interesting role in that, the cultural imaginary. There we are. um and I think they are also a really a loaded symbol with which to talk about work and the artist's role in making work and like, yeah, those labor conditions. I'm gonna stop chatting because I'm now officially just rambling. It's probably better for me to just read the text, right? Um, but okay, welcome Pomodoro. The gallery cleared out the old storage space at the back of the building to make way for a stable. Pomodoro didn't want a fuss, but the gallery had never had an artist in residence before, let alone an artist that was also actually a horse. They had a welcome committee. The head curator organised a banner making workshop with kids who lived nearby, and when Pomodoro stepped out of her horse box, everyone was waiting in the cobbled courtyard. They pulled the trigger on a confetti cannon and unfurled the banner that read, Welcome Pomodoro, with big red potato stamped hearts instead of O's. Pomodoro took the in residence thing very seriously. She slept in the old storage room stable where they had arranged stacks of old press releases into a kind of bed. Every morning, she followed the same routine. She would brush her teeth and her mane in the gallery toilets, trot around the courtyard, warm up the expensive coffee machine in the gallery cafe, and make herself a fancy latte. At first, she had to be careful not to burn the oat milk with her clumsy hooves, but eventually she got really good and could pour the milky foam out into a cute heart shape. She'd read the newspaper and gaze out of the big gallery windows. When the gallery opened, Pomodoro was at her place behind the front desk. Oh my god, oh no. It's that point in the afternoon where I'm just falling asleep at my desk. Um, she thought the front desk was the right place for an artist in residence to be. ready and waiting with her typewriter, present, visible, definitely and unquestionably in residence. Pomodoro, an elegant palomino, wearing tortoiseshell glasses on the end of her big blunt nose, wearing a gallery lanyard and name label. If visitors stopped to talk, Pomodoro would write something for them. Something. Anything. She would tap, tap, tap on the typewriter and tear the thin paper away, handing little scrolls to people on their way in and out of the gallery. A haiku about bees, a clipped sentence from the novel she was reading, a brief description of the dream she had last night, directions to the toilet. She called them poems, but really they were just an excuse to be there at the front desk, chatting to people and watching the way the gallery moved around her. When night fell, Pomodoro lay awake in her stable, feeling discreetly weird. At first, she felt like the Phantom of the Opera, haunting the gallery with her constant looming presence. But putting aside the feeling of her own omnipotence, there was another, deeper weirdness. Was this what she, the artist, was meant to be doing? Was this art? I mean, sure, call it social practice. The artist was present, very valid, but it also felt weird. Mostly the feeling was that really she just worked there, which she did. She was an artist making art in a gallery. The gallery was the place where she, an artist, was making work. Art to go in the gallery, a place to put art made by an artist, which is what she was. At this point, Pomodoro bucked her hind legs up behind her in frustration. Something felt incongruous. She couldn't tell what it was, but going round in circles about it was beginning to make her feel genuinely nauseous. Maybe it was because she was an actual horse. Maybe it was because she was an artist. Maybe it was the accumulated mix of intimacy and fatigue, spending so much time in one place. The kind of work she was doing felt weird or different or set apart from the other kind of work. Uh, oh no, hold on, I've messed up the lines. The kind of work she was doing felt weird or different or set apart from what other people at work in the gallery did. The girls on the ticket desk sold tickets. The curator sat in his office and sent emails. The guy in the cafe rang up the till, frothed the milk, and brought little cakes out to people. The cleaners polished and mopped, and sometimes at night they would bring out a big machine to shine the floor. But what was she, an artist, doing? If the curator had sidled up to her during one of his coffee breaks and asked, she'd have said, I'm making art, of course. But was that work in the same way as selling tickets, polishing floors, even sending emails? What quality did making art have to set it apart or to make it the same as those other kinds of labour? Should it feel different, special, or should it have felt the same? Pomodoro couldn't tell. The next morning, Pomodoro slipped red woolly socks over her hooves so they didn't scuff the gallery's shiny parquet floors. She brushed her teeth and her mane in the gallery toilet, raced fast across the yard, and went straight up to the gallery's reading room with her foam heart latte. Sat at a laptop instead of a typewriter, she tap tap tapped away on the keys, typing with the full frontal force of the internet on her horse brain. In 1973, Mio Lederman performed a work of art and an act of work. Washing tracks maintenance outside. She washed the steps of the Wadsworth Senior Museum in Hartford, Connecticut. She cleaned the gallery floor. What made it art was that she wielded a mop like a paintbrush, not instead of a paintbrush. What made it art was that she wrote a manifesto 4 years earlier about how there are two basic systems of work that govern the world: development and maintenance. Development is associated with the avant garde, the individual, the novel, the productive. Maintenance is associated with tasks of preservation, sustenance, protection, repetition. Development is pure creation. Maintenance is keeping the dust off the pure creation. The manifesto states that our culture values development over maintenance, probably because development is key to facilitating growth under a capitalist system that values expansion above all else. People had been washing the Wadsworth Atheneum steps for years before and after 1973, without it being considered serious art. That was just work. But Leo Lederman Ukeles was an artist, so therefore had the transformative power to make work into art, or art into work. Pomodoro wasn't quite sure. Either way, it fucked with the whole structure and system. Like a glitch, I guess, in the structure and system of value. The art brings a new perspective to work. The novelty makes the art development work rather than maintenance work. But the fact of the labour being performed makes it quite literally maintenance work. But it is conceptually different to the usual kind of work being performed, so it is development. But the entire conceptual premise is that the artist is performing an act of labour that falls within the category of maintenance. That is literally the whole and entire point of Euclid's work of art. Work of art. Ha! You see? The clue is in the name. Artwork. I am very clever, you see. Pomodoro stared into the distance, her big horse eyes glassy and dark. I guess what it is that art is slippery and work is slippery also. Horses understand work intimately, of course. Is art actually real work? Is a horse a real artist if they make works of art while also knowing deep in their horse bones what work intimately is? Does that make them the realest artists of all? What is real work? What is art? Define a chair. A chair has four legs and you can sit on it. Therefore, a horse is a kind of chair because it has four legs and you can sit on it. You see? We all know what a chair is, we all know what a horse is, and we all know that a horse is not a kind of chair. But as soon as you apply a circular definition, it breaks any attempt at understanding apart. Labour is work is art, is work is labour. The horse works and the artist is a worker. The horse is an artist, and horses understand work intimately. Therefore, the artist is a kind of workhorse. And horse is the only stable entity in that whole conundrum. Art, work, horse. Those three things trotted around and round in a circle. Those three things trotted round and round in a circle in Pomodoro's mind like a carousel. She was sweating in her chair, splitting horsehairs about whether art was work. Does it matter if it is or if it isn't? What even is work anyway? Hooves hammered on the keyboards, tap tap typing. Sorry. Karl Marx defines work as the physical, mental act of transformation, activity that transforms your environment to meet your needs and wants. Work is an act of production. Work is just a kind of action. When you really look at it, I guess it is the most active action one can act out. Every action is a kind of work. Every act of work is an actual action, an act of action. That sentence doesn't make any sense. I don't think it's meant to. Um, Pomodoro shook her big horse head with a big horse sigh, air shuddering out of her big blunt nose. In 1969, at a gallery in Rome called L'Attico, Yanis Kounelis staged an installation called Senza Titolo, 12 Cavalli. I don't know how to say 12 in Italian. Let me actually Google 12 in, because this was a problem when Dodici. Dodici. This was a problem when I was reading the audio for this text. I didn't know how to say 12 in Italian. So I just wrote the number, and 12 Cavalli doesn't sound as fancy, does it? Okay. So Yanis Kounelis staged an installation called Senza Titolo. Dodici Cavalli. In English, untitled 12 Horses. 12 live actual horses were positioned around the gallery, tethered to the wall, leaving a void at the centre of the exhibition space. Nothing else in the gallery, just horses and blank walls. Live horses became ready-mades, art objects. Kounelis considered himself a painter, considered this work a kind of painting, at least painting as pictorial intervention. The gallery's walls or the rectangular exhibition space became a canvas, and real living horses became image. Is image the right word? Maybe object, shape, colour, line, form. Horses have often been subjects in paintings, but in Dodici Cavalli, but in Dodici Cavalli, they were past subject. The horses were positioned up against the wall like elements on the painter's pictorial plane, flat but actual and real life. The horse's object became mass, something that occupied pictorial space. If work is an action, the most active action, then maybe we are only at work when we act like we are at work. The horses in Dodici Cavalli were acting as the shapes in a painting. They were acting. Acting is the only kind of work because in acting, we perform the work as an action. Yes, yes, horses understand work intimately. Work integrates you within an economic system, within social, political modes of cooperation. Work makes you human in a way, even if you are actually a horse. Horses pulled carts, plough fields. Oh, horses pull carts, plough fields, carry Napoleon into battle, act like painted shapes up against a matte white wall in a gallery called L'Attico. Pomodoro left the reading room and stood in the gallery courtyard, hooves in red socks and silent on the cobbled stones. Her head tilted up and she looked at the sky. It was nearly night. Draft horse, pack horse, workhorse, horse as artist, artist as worker. The girls on the ticket desk sold tickets. The curator sent emails. The guy in the cafe frothed milk. The cleaners made everything so shiny and clean that Pomodoro could blink at her reflection in the parquet floors. They were all on the gallery's payroll, and at the end of every month, the lady from accounts, Sue, filled in a spreadsheet and everyone got a payslip. Everyone except Pomodoro. The girls at the ticket desk, the curator, the cafe guys, the cleaners, they all got to leave the gallery. When they left the gallery, they stopped being at work. Pomodoro hadn't left the gallery since the welcome committee unfurled their banner. But even if she had, she wouldn't stop being at work. The work of being an artist was weird or different or set apart from what other people at work in the gallery did. Pomodoro didn't stop being an artist at 5 p.m. or when she left the gallery. She couldn't stop being an artist in the same way that she couldn't stop being a horse. Work integrates you within an economic system. You do work and you receive money for your labour. Artists exist within an economic system that works in a strange way. Artists exist within an economic. Artists do the work of making art, and maybe they sell it to a collector for money. Artists do the work of making art, and maybe a gallery pays them a little bit of money to show it to people in an exhibition. Artists do the work of making art, and maybe they don't get paid for that work at all. Pomodoro stared at the sky until it was definitely dark, until she could definitely see the stars blinking back at her. There they were, whizzing around above her, making their patterns and shapes, doing a dance as they got into their constellations. Pegasus appeared, a winged horse made of stars, rising out of the sky. He cleared his throat. Horses understand work intimately. I myself used my hooves to dig out a spring, Hippocrene, which blessed those who drank its water with the ability to write poetry. Beautiful Pomodoro, you must know. If art is work, the artist is a workhorse. If art isn't work, then we are all horses. Labour is work, is artist, work is labour. The horse works and the artist is a worker. The horse is an artist and horses understand work intimately. Therefore, the artist is a kind of workhorse. So art is definitely work. Maybe art is the only kind of work ever. Pegasus flapped his starry wings and rose up out of the sky. As he flew away, he blew Pomodoro a kiss. Alone with the empty night sky, no more stars in sight. With the red socks on her hooves, Pomodoro clopped silently into the gallery. Carefully, she slid a can of spray paint out of her red sock. She shook it, steadied her hoof, and wrote one last poem on the perfect, matte white gallery wall. The curator arrived to open up the gallery at 9 every morning. Pomodoro was not at the front desk. She wasn't in the cafe. She wasn't in the storage room stable. He peered into the gallery's exhibition space. The cleaners were polishing the wall, but the red spray paint was glossy and wouldn't budge. On the perfect matte white gallery wall and reflected back in the gallery's shining parquet floor was a poem. A poem was waiting for him. Goodbye, Pomodoro. And that's the text. What do I want to say that I've not already said? Yeah, I think the relationship art has to work and the kind of labor that working art working the kind of labor that art workers do, artists as workers do, I think it is I think when we talk about work, there's the assumption that like it's not what people actually want to do, you know? It's not anyone's first choice of activity. No, if people actually wanted to work, they probably wouldn't pay us to do it. They wouldn't have to, you know? So when it comes to things like art and the creative industries, um, I think people often see creative work as not real work or like there is like a simultaneous under and overvaluing of the labor attached to creative work. Like, you know, the artist is seen as a singular genius, the one person that like does the act of creation. They have this transformative power to make ordinary things, items, assemblage, whatever, materials into something transgressive and magical like an artwork. But then they also are completely underpaid for their work, right? Like they have a weird relationship to payment. They make the work first and then they depend on someone buying it or someone choosing it to go in a show or like um, there's just like the constant hope of payment, which may or may not come. It's just kind of a gamble every time you make something. And in a way, expecting payment for your work is seen as like a shameful admission of like your human needs when you know it shouldn't be about the money, it should be about the passion, it should be about the art itself, the art, you know. It kind of it's meant to transgress money as like a material fact. Of course it doesn't, and like, you know, artists must eat um and pay rent and keep the lights on and pay their energy bill and all these other things. um And also, you know, regardless of like human needs, it's work, it's people's job. People deserve to be paid for their work, regardless of whether they are not able to keep the lights on. If they want to buy trainers, you know, like it's not just about like base needs and like fundamental like human rights. It's also about the fact that workers are entitled to financial compensation for their work, like a fair wage. Um, but I think, yeah, that artistic labour is often undervalued. The curator, um, it's like a weird dynamic between curator and artist, where the person actually making the content for the exhibition is underpaid and precariously employed, not really employed, precariously um, attached. Their labour conditions are incredibly precarious in relationship to the gallery, but the person organising it all gets like a payroll, a pension. They get like a salary every year. They know what's coming in. They can take that to the bank and get a mortgage, but an artist has to be self-employed, going from exhibition to exhibition. And I think as a result, it create like that precarity creates a really weird labor, and like the labor conditions of being an artist are quite strange. You maybe, if you're lucky, have like one or two shows a year, but if you're paid maybe what 5 grand, three to 5 grand for those shows, that's still a yearly wage. If your sole income is your art, that's still a yearly wage of like 10 grand, which isn't that's not enough to keep going. So yeah, the labour conditions mean that artists have to are required literally to do other jobs as well as making art to make a living, and so it creates this dual split between like the work that I do to make art and the work that I do to keep myself alive and like make a living. But art is a kind of work, and we treat it with the seriousness of work. So it's yeah, the whole surrounding issues I think are not completely clearly articulated within this text, because there's all of that. But I found myself really clinging to the weirdness of it and like the positions artists have within, you know, the creative economy, and also society, like the society of the creative industries, like the social capital of being an artist, but also, yeah, the lack of financial capital in being an artist. I found that quite weird, and it's really stuck with me. And I wanted to kind of, yeah, do something to process it, or neatly package it, or draw a line around it in a story. And I think a horse is actually a weirdly perfect container for that. All of that weirdness, all that weird feeling. Um, I do. There are parts of it that I think are a bit too like I think it repeats the logic of itself a bit too much, that text, and I kind of wish I had a one day more to kind of do the polishing. But um I also don't care. Like it's like it's I think it's easy to be really, really precious about things like this. And I think for the website, or like for the Sunday texts, even though they are like more formal than the blog, I think I still want to be quite fast and loose with how, you know, how we put things out there, because I think it's better to shoot from the hip and like just chuck things out as they are. And it's just, you just got to surrender to the schedule, to the process of putting things out on time. Um, so yeah, that's all. Do I have anything else to say? Oh, I do have something else to say, and it's that Gabrielle is a genius. She knows everything. I really spun my wheels on like figuring out an ending for this text, and she knew exactly what to slot in there. I think that's why at the moment I'm reading that John York book about the theory of story theory, like um like structural theory within is it structural theory? I don't know, but like yeah, theory around structure um in narrative and storytelling. And it's called Into the Woods, and I think it's, yeah, quite dense. I feel like it's gonna take me forever to read, but I think I just wanna know more about narrative and narrative conventions, and I want to understand why stories have the shapes that they have, and like their structures, and like the conventions, and the tropes. I want to know all of those things so that when it comes to things like this, I can kind of I can have a backbone within a piece of criticism. Like a piece of criticism can also be a story, a really good story that's compelling and fun to read. And it, like, criticism can tell a story, or you can do criticism through telling a story. I think that's very exciting to me at the moment. And I think I've been edging towards it for a couple years. I think when you look at like some of my texts last year or even the year before, 2021, I've kind of gone from doing the analysis and doing the takedown. I'm really bored of that now. And now I just wanna um maybe have a bit more fun with it. I wanna be a bit more slippery and hard to pin down. Because doing the analysis is all very well and good, but when you leave holes in the analysis, it eats you alive for the years after. Like there are still texts that I look back on now and I'm like, ugh, and I just can't do that anymore. I can't do the art thoughts where I'm like writing about big ideas and then doing the same exact text again and again, like a couple months later, a couple years on, because I've not done the analysis properly. I've left holes. Like I'm bored of that now. I can't keep churning that up. I just want to tell a good story. Criticism is fiction, and I think it feels more professional, and it feels like I've got more room to do bonkers things, like write about horses going on at residency. That feels silly. It feels like it's exciting too because we're playing with form. Um, yeah, that's all. I'll leave if you're watching this not live, then I will leave the actual link to the text, because I know that I sometimes when someone's reading something aloud to me, like I've got to have the words in front of me, or I simply like my eyes glaze over, eyes zone out. So if you have, do you know what? If that is you and you've zoned out for the entire half hour we've been here, I doubt you've actually watched this whole thing. So this note might be for no one in particular, but I'll leave the link in the description box, as well as a link to our Patreon, because you can support us. We are reader supported, and if you've got a bit of spare cash, which I know is unlikely in this day and age, but if you have and you would like to support our writing and support us in a way that maybe allows us to be a bit more independent and do bits that are a bit more experimental and unstable, then our Patreon is a good place to do it. That's literally only if you've got spare cash. I know, but no one does. It's like totally fine. But I just have to mention it. Um, the con says art is unpaid overtime all the time, right? And yet it is like a job that like it's not like a 9 to 5. It's not like you have set hours that like you go over. You know what I mean? Because if it was overtime, it would be like, right, these are my set hours where I do the art, and then anything over that is overtime. And like, I'm not being paid for that. But it's that, you're right. It's that all the time. It's all work that you're doing extra on top of the actual work. And it's that thing, isn't it? No one's asking you to do it, but you can't help it. You can't stop. You're compelled. It's, I just find the terms and conditions of so fascinating because, yeah, why do we do that? But then it's also like asking a writer to stop writing. It's like asking a musician to never listen to music ever again or play music ever again. It's just not going to happen. Like, this is like, I think art making is like such a fundamental part of the human condition. Like, it's like when you look back at like those prehistoric cave paintings, like those lasso paintings and like those paintings in the lasso caves, like before we had like written language, before we had like drawing and like art making was like the first kind of technology. It is something that has like accompanied human history, culture, and the production of culture has um accompanied like human history and art making. It's been the same. Like, it's just making art, making culture is just like a fundamental part of being human. And yet, it is also something that we don't really know how to metabolize within like, the current capitalist system that we live within. And I think that's so strange, like, that we don't know how to negotiate the terms of that as a social category, artist. Um, but maybe it makes sense because maybe, art is only of use when it is profitable, when it is an asset class, like commercial art, like is that 1% of the art world that makes loads of money and artists are making bank, and it's because they are making art that is free from function. Like, it's art is a form, a cultural format that is free from function and aligned with intellectual discourses that like assign it a kind of importance and an aura, but it's like free from functionality. Like, it doesn't have to be useful. Like, it's not like designing water bottles or like houses or clothes, um it just can be there like this, like not AirPods, but like, like things can be, anything can be art. Like, it can be art. um it doesn't have to be fundamentally useful. It's just the only asset class, I believe, the only asset class that is free from functionality. And so that kind of art is like really, really well paid, because it's an asset class and you're trading it on an open, unregulated market. But yeah, this is tangential. Maybe I should write about the commercial art world, but I never know where to start with that because I know literally nothing about that. But I think if they are the only artists that are out there getting paid, like, maybe I should have a word, figure out what secrets they can impart. But someone just gazed in through the window and we made direct eye contact, and it was really strange. Like, when you're not like expecting to make eye contact with a complete stranger and it just unnerves you. I didn't like that. Ugh. It just went through me. Okay. All right. Bye. That's for the thumbnail. Okay. That's it. End stream. See you later. Bye.